Good morning, good people. This is Jeff again, and I wanted to give you a note of encouragement today. You know how sometimes the world seems like it's just beating down on you? Things seem to be piling up, and it just seems like life itself can be overwhelming sometimes. But I wanted to give you an encouraging note. So, this is from the letter that James, the half brother of Jesus, wrote to early Christians. This is found in chapter 5, starting in verse 7. He said, "Therefore be patient, brethren, until the coming of the Lord. See how the farmer waits for the precious fruit of the earth, waiting patiently for it until it receives the early and latter rain. You also be patient. Establish your hearts, for the coming of the Lord is at hand." Now, James wrote this about 1,900 years ago, and he said the coming of the Lord is at hand. And it is. And we are living on the cusp of that event. But I wanted to share that with you because he says, establish your hearts and be patient. If you've ever served in the military, or if you haven't, I'll share with you that when you're deployed, you almost immediately start looking for the time when you get to go back home. And that's something that's always on your mind and in your heart, right? Especially if you know how long the deployment's going to be. That isn't always the case, but let's say it's going to be a 6-month deployment or a 3-month deployment, and you tell yourself, "Oh my gosh, if I deploy in January, that means in April I'll be able to get back home." And you always have that longing. You always have that sense of, man, whatever happens is okay. I'm going to get through it because I'm going to get to go back home in April. This really, really happens to people, or happened a lot to people in Vietnam. Almost all of the veterans that I've spoken to who served in Vietnam said they knew their rotation date by heart, right? So they knew, hey, I've got 12 months in country. Here's when I get to go home. And we should be that way as followers of Christ, right? Living on this planet can be a rough thing. It can be filled with nonsense and with just kind of ridiculousness, right? Especially in the United States. I don't know how about other countries, but our government has so much bureaucracy and it places so many burdens on you, local, state, and national, right? All kinds of taxes and fees. You can't drive down the street unless you have certain types of certificates or tags on your vehicle. You can't go fishing unless you pay for a license. You can't do anything unless you pay the government to do it. And that gets to be a burden. And you just think sometimes, why can't they just leave me alone? They don't do anything. They're pernicious, right? They don't do any positive things for us. They're not stopping crime or fixing the roads or making sure we're not being poisoned. In fact, they're very often doing the opposite. And this is a systemic discussion. I'm not talking about individual people. There are some wonderful individuals who work in government at the local, state, and federal level. It's just the system creep gets to be an awful lot, right? Well, take heart, be patient, and establish your hearts because the kingdom of the Lord is at hand. It's here inside of us that are followers of Jesus. But we also look to the day when it's here in full force on the earth, when Jesus comes and reestablishes his kingdom and does away with worldly government and fees and taxes and nonsense and establishes his kingdom here on earth where there's love for God and love for one another. There's no crime, there's no pain, there's no anger, there's no fear, there's no cowardice, there's no immorality. It's the worship of God and love. So set your hearts to that and be encouraged. And look for an opportunity today to share that with someone else. Love y'all. Be blessed.